18 years ago, Hezbollah dealt the Israeli occupation a military and tactical defeat during the 2006 July war on Lebanon. On July 12, 2006, after the failure of indirect negotiations for the release of Lebanese and Palestinian prisoners from Israel's shackles, and the occupation's insistence on keeping them imprisoned, some for as long as 30 years, the Lebanese Resistance Party, Hezbollah, took it upon itself to liberate them. Thus, Hezbollah captured 2 Israeli soldiers in exchange for liberating the prisoners. And then came Operation Truthful Promise. Immediately, the Israeli occupation waged an all-out brutal war against Lebanon, lasting for 34 days after a UN-facilitated ceasefire came into effect on August 14 of the same year. Israeli warplanes dropped around 7,000 missiles or bombs, including 929 cluster bombs, which not only contaminated 37 square meters of Lebanon's land, but also mainly targeted civilians and infrastructure. Connecting bridges and main transportation routes were bombed, buildings were demolished, civilians were massacred, and communication towers were leveled. Capturing the extent of Israel's savagery during the 2006 July war in numbers, Israel destroyed or flattened 125,000 homes, forcibly displaced around 1 million civilians, murdered around 1,200 civilians, and wounded 4,400 others. Children and women were hit the hardest as they accounted for the majority of the Israeli occupation forces' aggression. The occupation also destroyed a power station in south of Lebanon's capital, Beirut, leading to up to 15,000 metric tons of heavy fuel oil flowing into Lebanon's coast, creating a major ecological catastrophe. In addition, Lebanon's economy was dealt a heavy blow. Instead of growing as per forecasts by 5 to 6% that year, it shrank by 5%. The tourism sector was hit hard, and the war damage was directly estimated at $2.8 billion as per the Lebanese government statistics. No Israeli war concludes without barbaric massacres, with the most notorious one being the Second Qana massacre, whose victims amounted to at least 54 civilians, including 27 children. The Israeli attack targeted a 3-story residential building where 2 extended families sought shelter. Rescue efforts were hindered by ongoing Israeli bombardment. In a nutshell, Israel wreaked havoc in Lebanon. Many saw this war as an opportunity for the occupation to make up for its crushing defeat back in the year 2000. I mean, we all remember former United States Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice's famous description of the plight of Lebanon as part of the birth pangs of a new Middle East, and her assertion that Israel should ignore calls for a ceasefire. But little did they know that the 2006 July war would deal another blow to the Israeli occupation, causing a far worse defeat whereby the myth of the so-called invincible army was completely shattered. Who can forget the all-time famous "look at it burn" moment when the Secretary General of the Islamic Resistance in Lebanon, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, announced live on air the targeting of the Israeli military warship Sa'ir 5 on July 14, 2006. 18 years ago, Hezbollah inflicted sheer humiliation on the Israeli entity and shattered Israel's invincibility, overwhelmed and defeated by the modest capabilities of Hezbollah at the time. 18 years later, Hezbollah and the rest of the axis of resistance continue to do so.